welcome to Mondays with Maria Gould. Today is June the 16th, 2025. I will be putting this podcast out early in honor of Father's Day. This is episode 24. It's a Father's Day special. How to overcome father wounding. So what is father wounding? Now, this is the different way of saying daddy issues. Okay, so to put it bluntly, basically, father wounding happens when there's unhealthy bonding or maybe an absence of bonding between the father figure in the home and the child. So this can be a father that is controlling or critical, maybe even overprotective and, controlling in that way, not letting the child do anything. This abusive behavior, whether it shows up verbally, with verbal abusive language, physical abuse, mental or emotional abuse, or sexual inappropriateness, sexual abuse, this energy can wound a child so deeply that it affects their self-worth, their self-view of themselves. It'll make them feel like they've never been good enough. Maybe they can't do anything right. All of these deep, deep wounds can show up in their everyday life, in every relationship that they have moving forward. And to create healthy relationships, it might take them a long time to understand that they are attracted to people like their abusive parent, like their abusive father. And it can take a long time before they understand that that isn't what love is. So how does it happen as well? Perhaps a father is physically there. Perhaps they're financially providing for the family. But perhaps there's not the emotional, mental support that child needs. This feeling of neglect or not connecting with the father figure can make the child feel very insecure, needing reassurance all of the time, can make the child feel like there's a lot of anxiety because they didn't get that connection with their father figure and get that reassurance at that critical state. So even if the father is in the home, this can make them feel abandoned in many ways if the father is emotionally unavailable. Maybe the father is just very stoic and perhaps very in their mind about what their work is and doesn't engage with the child very much, doesn't get involved in the child's life, take interest in the child's life. Their idea that they are being a good father is they are there physically present, that they are there providing boundaries and discipline, and that they are there financially supporting. They believe in their mind that this is what a good father figure is. But that emotionally unavailable male, especially for females, can make it very difficult for the female to actually have the cellular receptors to attract a mate that actually will be emotionally available for them. So this can make them very clingy, very needy, very controlling, trying to, again, make themselves feel safe, to reassure themselves in a lot of ways, right? They might need a lot of verbal reassurance from a partner. They might feel very insecure around that partner. All of these things are because of that emotionally unavailable father figure. So we will talk more about how this shows up in our lives, but another way a child can feel really abandoned is, of course, if the father is physically not present, right? For whatever reason, if the father leaves the family or leaves the mother at a very young age. There's no parental father figure growing up in the home. This can be very detrimental to children because they feel like there's a part of them missing. There's a part of who they are, and knowing how they show up in the world isn't there for them to mimic. So their cells literally are looking for that father figure in many ways. They might have a mentor or create a business partnership or look up to a hockey coach or a sports coach in some way to give them that father figure guidance. But again, if that father figure that they've chosen is not of the highest integrity, they can easily abuse this position and harm the child even more. So when the father is physically not in the home, this can cause deep, deep wounding. So let's talk a little bit about some of these patterns and how they might show up in our life, either for men or for women. So for boys, if they have that father figure that isn't emotionally there for them, doesn't support them, doesn't cheer them on, this can, again, the boy will mimic that in his own relationships. He will have a hard time emotionally connecting. If the boy is quite emotionally based, which young boys are, and feeling like that's a weakness in himself or a wrongness about himself because he didn't see his father figure be emotional. Again, all of this is self-blaming, and they might mentally belittle themselves or put themselves down, creating extremely low self-worth and self-esteem. So there's many ways that the psyche tries to make sense of the situation. It's almost like our souls innately know how people should treat one another. It's like our soul comes in with that blueprint. And when our parental figures do not give us this sort of blueprint of how the mother figure and the father figure should treat a child, it really, really wounds the child that is so close to being that divine light, that they end up sometimes their whole life looking for this energy, looking for that compassionate father or that protective energy of a father, but that supporting cheerleader that a father can be as well. So they might be looking for this in their relationship. Young men might not know how to mimic that in the highest and best way because they didn't have that role model. Now, I am not blaming anyone's father. I definitely had a father figure that was physically there, but not very emotionally and mentally supporting. There were some verbal abuse and things like that. So again, no one has the perfect parental figure. But when we become aware of how these ways of being raised as a child can affect us later in life, and we can start to understand that when we get into relationships, this subconscious programming really will raise its head and show itself in the relationship. So, for example, for myself, I became kind of the protector dynamic in my relationship between my mother and father. My father had a tendency to be verbally abusive to my mother. My mother felt very much like a victim in a lot of circumstances. So I took on kind of like a masculine role of the protector of my mother. So this sort of dynamic made me kind of hate my father, right? He was the enemy. And this energy projected into my future relationships until I looked at my father wounding, until I looked at why am I doing this? This partner that I'm with is not like my father, right? And I had to really be aware of that and learning to not project my hurt from my childhood onto the relationship, onto that other person that really is innocent in all of that. So each time that we can witness it within ourselves, that father wounding, and look at it from just a compassionate way. Our fathers are not perfect people. If you are a father, you can probably attest that you're not a perfect father, right? We're all trying to do better than what our parents did, and that's literally how we progress as a human race. But forgiving ourselves when we do fall short, and knowing how to look at where our reactions come from, how to manage our reactions is a huge undertaking, right? Understanding ourselves enough and being compassionate enough for our own children to not want to be the tyrant that perhaps our parent was, or the verbally abusive father figure that our father was, or the emotionally unavailable father figure that we grew up with. So all of these things is because we self-reflect and we notice our behaviors and we go, oh, I don't want to be like that. So rather than reacting to a situation, we become introspective and we look at ourselves and go, I have choice in how I react here. Let's look at why I'm reacting that way. Let's ask for some healing around that. I do theta healing, which is a profound psychological healing technique. It actually can heal on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because it really takes the energy and the connection with source or creator, and we actually can scan intuitively into the body and see what the subconscious is holding, what the cells are holding as patterns, and why we're not connecting to our partner in a healthy way, what wounding happened as a child that needs healing so that we can learn those connections in a healthier way. So theta healing is profound at helping people shift a lot of the father wounding. Okay, recognizing these patterns when I was in my relationship and recognizing how I reacted to just the men in my life, right? I had grown up with this subconscious belief the man in the house was my enemy. So I would bring that aggressiveness and that boldness, and no one is going to push me around, no one is going to be verbally abusive or anything to me. So rather than playing the victim energy that my mother tended to have, I was never going to be a victim, right? And I overcorrected that energy, and I could never be soft in a relationship for a long time because I was trying to overcorrect what I saw in my mother, right? And not be that. I didn't want to mimic that. So my psyche's only recourse was to do the opposite, right? So once I noticed these patterns and started to heal not only what I saw my mother play as that role of the victim, but I started to heal how I needed to guard myself so much and how to let go of that role of the protector and to learn to protect myself in a different way, in a softer way, right? And just those subtleties of healing that can come with deep theta healing work can be so profound and help you make amazing discoveries about yourself and help you really shift these huge patterns. Very, very powerful. So once I recognized the patterns in myself and I started to see where they were coming from, another aspect that I took into consideration is, what did I need as a child then that I wasn't getting? What did I need? So when I was, kind of in that aggressive energy with my father, kind of butting heads with him, what I actually needed was, if my heart was a little softer, I would have needed just that support from him. Just, you're doing a good job. How is school going? Thank you for helping me. Like just those courtesies that would have softened me, right? So I learned in that reflection that I needed to be softer with myself. Rather than taking a mental 2x4 to myself, trying to be perfect. Again, people with the father wounding can have a tendency to try and be perfect to get their father's attention in some way. So that perfectionism in me was there. So I would have to mentally put the mental 2x4 down so that I could stop being so hard on myself and learn to be softer, learn to be kinder to myself in my own thoughts. Sometimes when I talk to people that have a lot of negative thinking towards themselves, lots of low self-esteem and self-worth, I ask them to think about how they think about themselves, what they're thinking about in their minds. So they might be saying things like, you're awful, you're a horrible person. This is their internal thoughts towards themselves. And then I ask them, would you ever say that to a best friend? Would you say that to your favorite pet? And they're horrified because in truth, no. We would never speak to somebody we care about in that manner. Yet when we have low self-worth, we think it's okay to talk to ourselves in that manner. So this is a huge shift for people to start to realize that speaking to themselves in a different way, if they weren't shown that by their parents, if their parents were overly critical or anything like that, and learning how to let go of that criticalness towards yourself can be such a huge life-changing experience. Okay, so looking and recognizing these mental patterns and shifting them, right? Choosing to react differently, knowing where they come from can help heal them. Giving yourself forgiveness that you were only doing the best that you could as a child. You really were mimicking what you were shown. And even in my circumstance where I overcorrected and did the opposite, was again my psyche just trying to know how to be in the world in a safe way for me, right? And I could see that the role my mother played wasn't a great one to exude or mimic, because I didn't want the path she was on. So my psyche overcorrected and I chose the opposite path, which has its own circumstances and learnings around it. It's definitely not perfect. But this is how the psyche works. It is always trying to bring balance to the mental state. It's always trying to bring safety on all levels to ourselves, physically, mentally, emotionally. The psyche is really that protective parent. So the psyche is always doing things to protect us on some level. So once we understand that and we recognize, these patterns that maybe you didn't get something as a child. Maybe just like me, you didn't get that comforting, that reassurance. Can you give that to yourself? Rather than the critical words towards yourself, could you practice positivity towards yourself, And when I first learned this, it was so difficult. It actually, for me, almost felt painful because it was against my mental narrative. So it took a while. I had to start with easy things. I liked my toes, right? I thought my feet were nice. I liked my nose, right? I had to start small, and I had to rebuild how I viewed myself in a healthier, more positive way. This is how we start to forgive ourselves. This is how we start to be kinder to ourselves. And we're reprogramming our subconscious rather than mimicking the criticalness that perhaps we were shown as children from our parents. Rather than continuing that pattern towards ourselves and towards our own children and towards our partner, we change it. We stop being critical with ourselves and therefore stop being critical with others. And this can make a huge difference in our own world, in our own relationships, and it helps heal that father wounding. Now, another big aspect of healing on any level, mentally, is to take care of the physical body. A big part that I learned in my recovery from bipolar, from clinical depression, was literally learning how to care for my body. And this included going to sleep at regular times, getting up at regular times, even if I didn't feel like it. Because that consistency in the sleep pattern started to allow me to get better, deeper sleep, right? And consistently eating healthier food choices and making sure that I was eating consistently. My father was diabetic, so that was a big part that I did learn from my family. We did eat 3 regular meals. It wasn't always the healthiest choices of meals. I was raised on a farm. We ate a lot of carbohydrates. We ate a lot of bread. We worked very hard, but a lot of those refined carbohydrates were not the best for my blood sugar rates. So over time, I learned to eat higher protein, a little higher fat, a little less refined carbohydrates, definitely more fruits, more vegetables. So all of these things feed your body and therefore feed your brain. So to help you recover from any wounding, mentally or emotionally, it's going to be easier if you feed your brain. Really critical. A lot of times mental health professionals, whether you're going to counseling or a psychiatrist, really they don't put enough emphasis on, are you taking care of your physical body? Because that self-love that we learn from caring for our body, feeding ourselves well, feeding ourselves regularly, getting regular sleep, getting exercise, moving our body so that, again, more oxygen goes through the body, therefore feeding our brain more oxygen. All of this will help us heal on every level. This physical pillar is overlooked way too often when we talk about emotional wounding, when we talk about mental health or emotional health. Without the pillar of physical health, it will weaken the other pillars within you, right? So critical that, really start with your own self-care. Are you going to bed at a decent time? To me, anything past 10 o'clock is way too late for me. My natural circadian rhythm is, I swear I could be a monk in a monastery. I can get up at 5 a.m., no problem. And my body naturally gets up at that time. That's when I want to have quiet. That's when I want introspection. I'll do a little bit of meditation or reading. All of these sorts of things, knowing your own rhythms and being consistent in them will make you feel healthier on every level, make you feel stronger on all levels. Okay, so these can be very healing to overcoming any wounding, even the father wounding. But now let's talk about the gift that can come with theta healing sessions. The big thing that I see with people when I do a theta healing session and they're wanting to work on relationship issues, and perhaps they feel like they can't connect to a certain person, or they have a good intellectual connection, but or even a physical connection, but not a lot of emotional connection. And a lot of times what I'm shown by Source, by the creator of all that is, when I ask permission to tune into their body and their subconscious, their cells, is that their cells literally don't know what it feels like to emotionally connect with a partner because they didn't have that emotional connection with that father figure as a child, if we're speaking about a woman or a man. So they don't know how to do that. Their cells don't know how to create those connections. You can see it in the energy. So once you go back and heal that from the past, from why they didn't feel fulfilled emotionally or connected emotionally as a child, when that is healed through the energy of Creator, it literally creates these little cool receptors on their cells that all of a sudden their cells know what that feels like to emotionally connect, and therefore they can attract people to them that are able to emotionally connect. It's very, very cool to watch how everything within ourself puts out a frequency into the world around us to attract to us what we're able and willing to receive. So it's profound, profound work. It works every time. It's so amazing. Right? So people also, if they feel like they had abusive relationships with their father, they might be attracted to the abuse of a partner. So when you go back with the theta healing session and heal how that inner child felt in those abuses, and a lot of times they believe that it was their fault they were being abused. So once that is healed, the psyche actually opens and realizes that the way they are treated, especially abusively, is not their fault. It's actually they're worth more. And they start to realize that that abusive partner that they're with is maybe, if they're not willing to change, if they're not willing to grow, is not the right partner for them. And when they come into a different relationship, they actually have the receptors to be supported, to be cared for, to be loved by a partner. And they allow it. It's such a beautiful thing. I've seen profound, profound shifts with people and their healing around father wounds and having and drawing in beautiful, beautiful relationships because they've healed that wound. So I hope today's talk has been helpful for you, and please reach out to your father in some way and wish them a happy Father's Day, wishing yourself, if you are a father, a happy Father's Day, and blessings to you and your own.